Chaf Dalet in Tinyana, in the second chelik of Likutei Moran, the famous Torah on Mitzvah G'dayla Liyos B'Simcha Tamid. Probably one of the most popular statements that has been turned into a few songs, and we're trying to dig to get as much as we can out of the words in this relatively short Torah. So in this particular edition here, it's on page 460. Mitzvah G'dayla Liyos B'Simcha Tamid. We have started this Torah. Just keep digging. For page 460 on that's what it says on here. Because
no, the bottom.
Oh, the bottom. Page 22. 460 in the black and white English translation. Apologies. Elu ve'elu. So, Mitzvah G'dayla Liyos B'Simcha Tamid. Mitzvah G'dayla, we've already talked about why it's considered Mitzvah G'dayla in contrast to an Avera G'dayla. Liyos means to exist. B'Simcha means inside. Inside, so it's a mitzvah, it's a tremendous mitzvah to exist inside Simcha. That means that we are surrounded by Simcha. It's like you're immersed in water, you're completely immersed in Simcha. That's really what this is stating in terms of the actual reading of the words. And then Tamid means it's consistent. So I was thinking a very simple mashal. We've covered a few mashalim, but I thought of a different one. Let's say you speak to a fish inside the ocean, and you try to persuade the fish that there's real reason to be extremely concerned, worried, petrified, live a life of daiga, because there's so much pollution, and there's been a number of terrible spillages that have caused many thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of fish to die. So the fish is going to answer back, look, the ocean is huge, and where I am right now, I don't have to be concerned for this, because I was created by a Kodesh Baruch Hu that the moment I sense that the water is not clean, I just turn direction. It takes me a split second. So I'm not going to take this too seriously. So the fish are not bent out of shape because there's a spill here, a spill there. There may even be thousands of spills. But because the ocean is just so large, the fish is not bothered. So if we're living inside, we're immersed inside thoughts of Simcha, then a person can easily respond to atzvus, marash chayra, anxiety, depression, and worries about what's going on in one's life. It's easier to go to the default, which we're claiming based on this one line, is to be simcha, inside simcha. It's not just a wandering thought. It's not just an intellectual understanding. It's a literal default lifestyle. So we also undug, and Buddy helped us with this. Tamid means that means this is a constant struggle, because it has to be that if there's a mitzvah for anything, a mitzvah not to be jealous, that means there's a struggle to be jealous and not to be jealous. Every single lo taseh is predicated on the assumption that were it not for Hashem telling me, have a munah in him, I would, has v'shalom, go to the other direction. If it weren't for the fact that Hashem tells me, lo tinaf, lo tachmoid, lo tirtzach, then all these would be options. Lo titar, don't hold resentment of thoughts of what people have said or done against me. I would entertain those with no hesitation, no resistance. But because HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me not to go there, lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha, don't think thoughts of hatred about other people, so therefore there has to be a constant struggle. So Tamid tells me it is a constant struggle, but Hashem through the Tzaddik Emes, Rav Nachman is telling us, Tamid here means my default has to be that I'm constantly struggling to hold on to Simcha. And he's going to explain this better in a few moments. We also said that Tamid is working on the assumption that it's attainable. That means, and Tamid means if it's constant, that means there are constant reasons for me to be able to be b'simcha, no matter what my circumstance or where I am in my time in my life, and no matter how low I may be. Tamid is working on the assumption that it's available to all, no matter what my circumstances. We also said Tamid has to also mean that it's a choice. It cannot be that my simcha is dependent on anything outside of me. Yes, it does help to have a better marriage, better finances, a more satisfying career, but all that is miyuta. That's all bonus. But in terms of the actual etzem simcha, that's got to be a choice we're making. Ulehiskaber. Hiskaber is a very interesting lashon because it's reflexive. That means I am making myself strong. The next word, laharchik, now that I'm strong myself, now I can push away the marashchara, the atzvus ve'hamarashchara b'chol koichai. So the first part of this is I've got to make myself strong. And we've mentioned that Hashem gave us unbelievable advantage. We have a smile. Everyone can do that. Everyone in a moment can sing. In a moment, a person can dance. We've got all these sasoin, outward manifestations of simcha that we are all capable of accessing immediately, especially song, which we're going to see in a few minutes, the power of music. As Rabbi was going to explain, there is a chain of command. There's actually a shalshelis. There's a way how the neshama feeds the body, and the neshama, when it gets excited by song, by music, by dance, that actually changes my heartbeat. The heartbeat, the pulse inside of me, actually determines to what extent any illness either enters or that's already in my body increases, or to what extent I can actually be merapeh myself through the simcha, which we're going to see that chain of command. It's a fascinating claim that really the whole universe is one unit, unified whole. We say every day Hashem Echad. When we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, it literally means Ein Od Milvadoi. Nothing else exists except Echad. Hashem's one. And that means everything that we interface with is actually Hashem surfacing, so to speak, in our lives in that moment, which we're going to see when Rabbi Nachman talks about what are the major resistance to simcha, and that he's going to tell us is the constant yisurin, daigers, worries that come up on a daily, hourly basis. That is the struggle. We're going to unwrap that hopefully and unpack it and see what's contained there, where we understand that Hashem, you're one big unified whole. And simcha is a huge master key to getting through the yisurin, getting through the daigers, getting through the atzvas and marashchara. So hiskaber means to actually make myself strong, and we've got many ways to do that. It can be learning, it can be davening, especially Hisbeidas, talk to Hashem. But also we got our smile, we got music, we got this dance. There's things literally in our immediate reach that we can turn on simcha, turn up the volume. Laharchik, now that we're miskaber ourselves, we're in a better position to push ourselves away from atzvus. Atzvus we're translating as, usually it's understood to be depression. In the Radak, which is we said is a Rishon, in Sefer HaShrashim. He's a huge medakdek. So he explains and he brings psukim, almost kima, every single example he gives of the meaning, a definition of word. So he'll bring you psukim all over Tanakh. And I'm also basing it on the Malbim. The atzvus is daiga. Atzvus is an inyan of worry, of anxiety. And that has v'shalom, if I replay the atzvus tape, the daiga tape enough times, it will lead to atzvus, where actually has v'shalom fall into feeling depressed. But we're going to see that Rav Nachman is giving us an amazing master key to how to deal with illness. It's really quite astonishing. So, Liskabil Harchik, you can push away atzvus, the amarashchara, b'chol koicha, with all your strength. Every single human being has at his disposal many strengths. Just your talent, just your business acumen, keeping busy is one way to keep the marashchara, paying attention to the black and the bitter that is going on in our life. But I don't have to get stuck there, like the fish in the sea, or like an eagle in the air. If you took an interview with an eagle, say, when you pass Newark, you see all these chimneys of factories, and there are thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them all around the world, and they're spewing out constant pollution into the air. I'm sure you must live a life of constant anxiety. An eagle looks at you and says, are you out of your mind? The circumference of planet Earth is 24,000 miles. If I went around the Earth, I would barely have even the slightest sniff of any of that pollution, because the air is constantly renewing itself and the wind is constantly blowing away and diminishing any amount of... So I don't live a life of worry. You can speak to an ant in the ground and say, aren't you concerned? There's all sorts of pollution with these pesticides. It says, I don't go there. I've been given the power to smell that I don't, the moment I smell that there's something that's not natural, I go to another part of the earth. Everything in the Bria is so beautifully perfect that when we mess up with whatever we're polluting, Hashem is telling us the amount of good is so much, it's not about positive versus negative. It's about reality. The amount of good is so real in comparison to the negative, as Rabbi we're going to see, Be'ezrat Hashem, even the negative is actually positive. But we'll get to that, Be'ezrat Hashem. But in the meantime, just the fact that I can be miskaber, I can overcome myself in the most important place. And that's not just dancing, it's not just listening to music and singing. Those are all within our reach. But the most important part is my polluted mind, where we can literally saturate our mind with thoughts of how good life is, the Nekudas Tovos, and add on more Nekudas Tovos until we realize the default is Simcha. That is the default. And that's what Hashem actually wants me to be. That's where He wants me to live. We're going to see, there's a pasuk in Mishlei, Perek Tesvav, pasuk Tesvav, easy to remember, 15:15. Kol Yemei Ha'ani Ra'im. The entire days, all the days, not one missing, all the days of the Ani, the poor man, Ra'im, are bad. Now, I don't know if we really need Shlomo Melech to tell us. If a guy can't pay his mortgage, he can't pay his rent, he can't pay the lease on the car, he's behind on school fees and who knows what other loans he might be in debt with. Kol Yemei Ha'ani Ra'im. Do I need Shlomo Melech Chacham Mikol Adam, the wisest man ever, to tell me that his life is so bad? It's too obvious. And obviously it doesn't mean that, because all we have to do is read the rest of the pasuk and it reveals what the first part of the pasuk is talking about. V'toiv leiv mishter tamid. Oh, a good mind. Leiv means mind. A good mind. Mishter tamid is at a constant banquet. We're not talking about regular anias. Usually I associate poverty with finances. But Shlomo Melech is talking about something that was much worse than financial poverty. It's poverty of the mind. Oh, Kol Yemei Ha'ani Ra'im. His entire life is bad. Because when he looks at the world, even when it sees good, he can only taste the bitter, the mara. When it's all white, but there's one black dot, he's fixated on the black dot and can't get it out of his brain. And so he's suffering constantly. V'toiv leiv mishter tamid, but the mind is looking at God's good in his life. He's at a constant banquet. And we know that is really the ultimate reality, and that's why Shlomo Melech is helping me understand that the pollution in my mind, I'm always one thought away, literally one thought away from ignoring it and moving on and paying attention to the good. So B'kol Kochai means, more than anything else, everybody's got a mind. You got a talent in business, you got a talent in writing, get busy with the writing. You got a talent in speaking, get busy with the speaking. Whatever it is that you got a talent Hashem gave you, B'chol me'odecha, serve Him with all your ma'od. Shlach Kodesh says ma'od is Lashon Adam, because Adam is 3 letters. Ma'od is the same letter as Adam, because Adam comes from Adama. We were created from the ground, and the ground is not good or bad, it's parev. It depends how you till it, how you provide the rainfall and the sunshine. The ground, the soil, is potential. And how we actually build the potential of the ma'od in Adam, that is through our choices, our bechira. It's our bechira that actually decides who we become. And bechira is on a one thought by thought basis, from second to second to second. Every now is a new now, new now, new now. One thought changes everything. So I can become a leiv toiv mishter tamid in one thought. I'm never far away from that. And that's why I think Rabbi Zal is always encouraging us to believe that Yush is an innocent misunderstanding of reality. It's a human perception, it's not real. Ein shum Yush ba'olam klal is literal, it doesn't exist. So, b'kol koichet, there's many koiches we all have to push away the atzvus, the marash koreh. V'kol ha'ola'os habayim al adam. This is a new point that Rabbi Zal now, Rav Nachman is really going to drill in. Kol ha'ola'os. How much is kol? 70, 80, 90, 95, do I hear 98, 99, 100? It's 100%. There's no room for it. Kol ha'ola'os, all illnesses. Habayim al Adam, very interesting language, that come upon a person. So I think I shared with you from a very famous doctor who said the germ is nothing. Did I share that with you? The germ is nothing. You're going to be, if you haven't heard this before, you'll be shocked who said this. The germ is nothing. The terrain, which is a muscle for the body, the terrain is everything. In a healthy body, the germ is shut out from invasion. The author of those two statements is Louis Pasteur. He's the one who discovered the germ. And he's telling you it's nothing. You have nothing to fear from the germ. The problem is that when my immune system is low, I'm stressed out from too much work, and I'm worrying about the family, I'm worrying about my career, I'm worrying about my partner who I think is messing me up financially. Before you know it, my immune system is lowered because of the stress that's taking place here, and now my body is inviting germs. I've created the opening because my immune system is lowered. So now I'm susceptible to much worse out there. So comes on Rav Nachman and is telling me all illnesses, habayim al adam, then there are shingles. No one should ever know from shingles. Shingles is a virus that actually exists inside the nervous system. It's dormant. You do not have to worry about it. However, a low immune system that's triggered by stress, which starts here, OMG, the shingles wake up. And when they wake up, it can be extraordinarily painful. But this is an amazing revelation that Rav Nachman is basically telling us, because just like your negative feelings are your friends, when I'm angry, my anger is a big friend to me, because it's telling me what I'm thinking. When I feel hatred, that's a very important feeling, because my feelings are created by my thoughts. So my feelings are my friends because they're telling me what I'm thinking. I'm thinking thoughts of hatred. And Hashem says, Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate your brother in your thoughts. Leiv means mind. When it's doubled over, it means thoughts. Oh, so my negative feelings are my friends because they tell me what I'm thinking. Once I know what I'm thinking, I have a better chance of divorcing from thinking that it's you who makes me angry. It's you who's making me hate you. It's my thinking about what you said or did that's making me hate you. It's never outside of me. So now in the same way that my feelings are created by Hashem as my friends, they're here to help me get in touch with the real me. Oh, illness is equally our friend. Because what Rav Nachman is now telling us, Kol ha'chalois habayim al adam kulam va'im rak mikilkul hasimcha. Oh, so what's my illness telling me? I need to turn up the volume on the simcha. Now, I might not be up to it if I got hit really bad. I've got to recover first. I can't pay enough attention because I'm in so much pain. I'm so distracted. But really, illness is good news. I'm not going to go into much detail now. Maybe in a future date we can. But before modern medicine, we call it institutionalized medicine, took over the world of refuah, it happened to be that everybody knew that your body is perfectly designed to serve you, and that when there was an illness, it's telling me how to be merape, how to repair myself. So for example, just a quick example, modern medicine has turned almost every symptom into a symptom of an illness, as opposed to the illness being my friend telling me what to do to correct myself. So for example, a person has diarrhea. Diarrhea is not negative, it's actually extremely good. It's my body getting rid of toxicity that doesn't belong in my system. And if I mistakenly think, oh no, this is terrible, I've got to take a special medicine that will stop the diarrhea. No, the diarrhea is actually good. Or if a person is constipated, that's good news. No, it's not good. But why is it good news? Because it's telling me maybe I'm not sleeping at the correct times, because my sleeping habits is all over the place, and that causes constipation. Or I don't have enough of a water-based diet, that causes constipation. Or I don't move my body enough, that causes constipation. Constipation is good news to tell me to do something about it. But when I take a laxative, says Rambam, in his not in Hilchos Deis Perek Dalet, where he talks about avoiding illness, but he does bring in his medical writings, which was translated by Dr. Fred Rosner, he brings there that taking laxatives for constipation is training the body to become lazy, because now the body will not get rid of the toxicity on its own. It will wait for the laxative. So all medications, I'm not decrying Chas v'Shalom, medications is necessary where my body can't do what it needs to do. But actually the illness itself is not a problem. If you get a rash, that's good news, because a rash is the way the body is getting rid of toxicity from the system. So to put cream on the rash to get the toxicity back inside might be what's necessary in the moment, but that's not a solution. Sometimes a person gets shingles, which is horribly, horribly painful, and the rash is actually telling the person that the pain inside the body is causing this rash, so I can take action against the shingles, which really starts with de-stressing myself. So Rav Nachman is telling us a very dogmatic statement. He's saying all illnesses are coming from a kilkul of simcha. We looked at the word kilkul. Kilkul is from the word kal. Kal means light. It's the opposite of kaved. That's the lashon of the Malbim and Radak. Kaved means to take something seriously. It's heavy. And if I don't take your kaved, which is the same shoresh, and I don't take your kaved seriously, I can create a kilkul because I'm taking your kaved kal. And when I do that, then Chas v'Shalom, I can ruin. That's what kilkul means. I can destroy the relationship. So when Rav Nachman uses this language, kulam ba'im rak mikilkul hasimcha, if simcha, happiness, is ruined because of what I'm thinking, I'm paying attention to, I get stressed. The stress lowers my immune, and then I'm open and susceptible to illness. We're going to look at this, but there are 10 types of song. Rav Nachman talks about it with the Tikkun HaKlali, and if you look in any of the Mefarshim that talk on Likutei Moharan, you'll see all the different tens that these 10 songs are connected. But really what you're about to see is really the chain of command, so to speak, of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu governs the body through the soul, and how the soul, when it's besimcha, that governs the body's health. And the most powerful language of the soul, and this is even the non-Jews cited this idea, is music. Music is the language of the soul, and it's so powerful that it can put a person into a state of joy, happiness, ecstasy, and it can also lower a person when especially Rav Nachman talks about it. I think it's in Torah Gimel, right, in the first Chelek, when Chas v'Shalom, listening to music from the Gentiles, where there's very frequently it leans towards lyrics that are sad or even nivel peh, and music that is very depressing, almost literally funeral music. So Rav Nachman is now going to help us understand how this shalshelis works, how it is from the soul to a person's illness or health. What's in between? Real music is really for simcha. And he quotes here from Tehillim Sadik Beis Pasuk Dalet, Ale Asher, and he says v'chulu. I was told I've got a Masorah from a Rebbe of mine who was actually not a rabbi, but he was his name was Mr. Book. Allah Hashem. He lived to over 100 years old. He lived in Gateshead. He was my private Rebbe. He was embarrassed to admit that he only finished Shas 9 times Be'iyun, and he was a businessman. He worked during the day. But his Rebbe was Rabbi Gedalia Rabinowitz from Sunderland in northeast England, who himself, Rabbi Gedalia Rabinowitz, Allah Shalom, was a Talmud in Volozhin. So his Rebbe, who he learnt with for 17 years, taught him the Derech HaLimud of Volozhin, and he taught me the Derech HaLimud that he learnt from his Rebbe. So he told me in Volozhin they followed in Shulchan Aruch, there's 2 days, how a Derech HaLimud, whether to learn sequentially, that's the Mechaber, or you learn Chumash, Nach, Mishnayos, and all inside Shas Bavli. And the Lashon there in Tosfos, I think Sanhedrin Kav Dalet, is that Bavli is Lashon Bolul. It's like a mixture of everything. So if you learn Shas, you can get Mishnayos and Brises and Psukim. So you don't need to learn sequentially. Anyone who takes the side of Tosfos, which is what the yeshiva world does, for the most part, that has to admit the logic. That if one's going to not follow sequentially learning, which is what Rabbi talks about, learn sequentially from beginning to end and start again. If I'm not going to do that, then what I should do is learn all Shas Bavli. Because I can't get all of Mishnayos, and you're not going to get all Mishnayos anywhere, but you're going to get most of Mishnayos. And you're not going to get all the Pesukim, we get most of the Pesukim if one learns all of Shas Bavli. Do you follow the logic? So even if we want to follow Tosfos and the Shach in the yeshiva world, then you have to finish Kol Shas to be able to be Mekayim that Deya. So he told me that in Volozhin, the Atzlanim, the lazy Bochrim, they would finish Shas 30 or 40 times. Each Masechta, there were 30, 40 times, and Mitsuyanim finished 101 plus times. So he told me, how did they follow this, the Deya, that you have to learn all Shas Bavli to get everything? So he said, every time they came to a pasuk, this was what was taught to me, you stop and you learn the whole parak, so that you get the pasuk in context. Most of the time, not every, but most of the time, when you learn Gemara, and it quotes a pasuk, what does it do? Does it give you the whole pasuk, or it just says v'chulu, etc.? Now, why does it do that? Was it to save on printing ink in the time of the printers, or when it was written down prior to 500 years ago, prior to printing? No, the answer was, this is how my Rebbe, Mr. Book, told me, is that everyone knew every pasuk Baal Peh, Kima everybody. And therefore, there was no need to say more than the first few words that you're quoting. And it's interesting, because sometimes in Shas, when you quote a pasuk, the support that the Gemara is bringing for a statement in this pasuk is not in the words that it's quoting, it's in the Bechulu. So you have to learn the whole pasuk. But he said in Volozhin they learned the whole pasuk. So over here, it's interesting, the Alesh Asher, the Ale Navel, the Ale Behigayon Bechinor, the whole pasuk is where you're going to see the real raya, because it's talking about a 10-stringed instrument, probably the kino, the harp, and navel, which is a lyre, it's another stringed instrument. But Rabbi Zal then quotes the rest of the next pasuk. The next pasuk, because you've got to get it in context. Why are you happy playing music? Ki semachtani Hashem b'foy alecha. Hashem, you made me happy when I pay attention to you, poy alecha, to what you do in my world. When I pay attention to Yetziat Mitzrayim and how we've survived every kind of galus imaginable, every type of persecution, and I look at the personal hashgacha pratis in my life, you make me happy when I pay attention to that. And the happiness is translated into playing an instrument. And out of the 10 strings, they are, so to speak, corresponding to 10 tunes. 10. Rav Nachman brings in Sichas Ran 96, Tzadik Vav, he says there's a malach, I think I shared this with you. There's a malach that has 1,000 heads. On each head is 1,000 tongues. Each tongue can sing 1,000 tunes, and if you add up the numbers, it comes to 1 trillion. So you've got one malach without instruments, just singing 1 trillion tunes. It's astonishing. You know, there are experts who, I don't remember the name of the composer, who he could tell if in a 28-string band, if there was one violinist that wasn't there. Now you and I can't do that, but he could tell because he was so attuned as a composer himself, who composed the music for the 28-string band, he was able to tell if one person was missing. But if you've got 1 trillion, oh my gosh. So Rabbi Zal points out the ecstasy. I'm not referring to a drug. You've got to be so careful nowadays. The simcha, the ecstatic simcha, let's call it that. The electric simcha that a person experiences listening to such a malach would mean that the soul would immediately leave the body. There's no way the body would be able to contain the soul, because the soul says, I'm out of here. I want that. And that's why I'm not going to go into it in any detail, but there's a lot of medical records. There's a Dr. Roy, oh my gosh, I've forgotten his last name. Forget his last name. There's a lot of doctors that talk about life after life. And that people who died medically but came back to life after the operation, there's literally thousands and thousands of such cases. So one book is called Life After Death by this Dr. Roy, I can't believe I can't remember the name. Okay, and there's also a Dr. Ian Stevenson who talks about this. He's got many volumes on the subject, and then he talks about children who are reincarnated, who make claims of being in a previous lifestyle. But the point I want to bring out is that anyone who died but then came back and went through the experience of going through this tunnel and then coming to a place of judgment, they saw the birth of a child which was themselves from their mother. It was so interesting that they said that they didn't want to come back to this world because of the ecstasy in the other world. And they're not referring to Olam Haba yet. They're just only at the beginning of Olam Haba. Because they didn't go through the whole, they didn't actually die completely. Their pulse was gone, their heart was gone, but obviously because they came back, they got a second chance. But it was so interesting that every single one of them would say the respect they had for being sent back in this world and being alive in this world. If it weren't for that, respecting that there's a reason why I was sent back, they would have committed suicide in order to die again, because it was so much better on the other side. But the ecstasy of listening to the perfection of Olam Haba music would be so great that the soul would leave the body. That's why, as you know, all Nevi'im, in order to get into a state of Simcha, which was the only state that was a pre-qualification for receiving Nevuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you had to be B'Simcha. If they weren't, then what did they do? They took with them wherever they went. What did they have with them? They had instruments, they had their own band, and they were getting them into it. So Rav Nachman is helping us understand there's 10 types of song. And Yesh Asar Minei Negina, Ve'elu Yud Minei Negina, Ba'im B'toich Asara Minei Tefakim. There are 10 types of pulses in the body. There's 10 categories. Actually, every single pulse rate is slightly different, but there are 10 categories of those pulse. So in the notes in Breslov, the BRI notes, you'll see a reference to Sharei Kedusha of Reb Chaim Vitazal, where he talks about how the Arizal himself had this chokhmah. He was able to feel your pulse, and he could tell what's going on inside your body. This was an art that was known way before institutionalized medicine, and there are a few people still today who do have that koyach. There's a rabbi, a Dr. Arkin, I think his name is Arkin, who actually lived in Monsey for many years. He now lives in Eretz, but he visits Monsey a few times a year to visit his patients. But this is what he does straight away. He feels your pulse and he tells you what's going wrong inside your body. There are other ways to do that. There's looking inside the eye. There's reflexologists who can actually read what's going on inside your body by reading the palm of your foot. I had that many, many years ago when I was seriously constipated when I came to America. I went meshuggah over the junk food. In England, we had one restaurant, and in Europe, it was like so unusual to have meaty, milky restaurants, Chinese restaurants, all kosher. I went meshuggah. I became very ill. I put on a lot of weight, and I didn't know I couldn't figure out what was the matter with me. I went to various doctors, and they couldn't figure out. I eventually went to a reflexologist in the Queens, and she read the palm of my foot and said, were you very athletic as a kid? I said, yes. Why would you say that? I said, because you've got a very strong metabolism, but you're abusing it with the food you eat. What do you eat? And I told her I have on average 1.5 liters of Coke or Sprite a day, and pizzas galore. And she said, well, if you want to continue that, I'll give you maximum 2 years, probably less, before you kill yourself. So, and she said it really seriously. And for some odd reason, I took it seriously, and I decided cold turkey. I stopped all the Coke. I haven't had it in nearly 38 years. No pizzas, no cheesecakes, nothing, because I was dying. I didn't want to die, and so why am I telling you this? Because the body is brilliant because it's designed by the perfect Creator, and the body gives us, inside and outside, ways for me to know that I'm taking care of myself or I'm abusing myself. And so Rav Nachman is now telling us one of the most obvious way is your pulse. And that a really good trained doctor would actually be able to tell you precisely if it's the kidneys or the liver or the heart. Whatever's actually going wrong is actually coded in the pulse itself. Now that takes tremendous chokhmah and wisdom and training, but it's a real chokhmah. So being that there are 10 types of song that affect all the categories of your pulse, now you understand that music actually affects your physical health. So now this is where he's now going to explain. Vehein mechayin oisan. Your pulse rate is what's giving you life force. And the 10 songs actually can improve your pulse. And we're not talking just about the physiology and the technical pulse rate. We're talking about when you ingest food, the food is going into your stomach. The stomach has an amazing ability to divide the nutrients in your food and send it to your bloodstream. That's what your heart is pumping the blood through your bloodstream, which goes through the capillaries, the veins, etc., to every part of your body. And all the nutrients, amino acids, carbohydrates, oxygen, or enzymes, proteins, everything that your body needs is going through your bloodstream to your cells. You live on a cellular level. The cells turn it into energy. Now you got chius. Depending on the quality of the food, whatever is actually toxic in the food gets expelled through the urine and defecation. So what Rabbi Nachman is explaining to us at this point is that the way the body has been designed is that the pulse of your body, which is telling you your heart is beating, but it's not just the heart beating. If you are married to music and your mind pays attention either to the sound and the lyrics, and you end up dancing, clapping, singing along with it, your body is getting a huge simcha dika workout. It's not just a physical workout if you're dancing, but you're actually getting an emotional, so to speak, intellectual workout over here, and it affects the heart rate, not just the pulse itself in terms of quantity, the rate at which the heart is beating, but it actually affects the food inside your stomach and how it's integrated into your body. What's really being said here is that you cannot divorce your mind from food and the way your body is designed to actually, through your lungs and your heart, to pump the food around your body through the bloodstream, which is where the food being assimilated in your stomach goes into your bloodstream. You cannot divorce this and say, this is an isolation of this. There's no such thing. You cannot be, I'm not speaking to any doctors per se, but a doctor, if he isolates your mind from your body, it's an innocent misunderstanding of the whole. H-W-H-O-L-E. You can't do that. And that's why it's so important. If Has v'Shalom, a person's ill, they should listen to music. It opens up your veins up to 30+%. That's extraordinary, because now the food that's in your veins is going to get to your place of healing much faster. If you're fasting, which might be a good idea, I'm not saying you should, but if you're fasting when you're ill, in order that the body is not busy with digestion. That's huge, because when the body gets food, it takes priority over every other function in your body. Digestion takes priority, because if food is not properly digested, it will putrefy. If it putrefies, then it becomes toxic. The toxicity in the bloodstream is what will bring illness, or Has v'Shalom, cause illness. So the fact that a person doesn't eat when they're ill, or eats much less, or only very healthy and very light foods, is giving his body a chance to heal, because it's not busy spending its energy on digestion. So Rav Nachman is helping us understand there is a deliberate connection between simcha and music and the pulse rate, and therefore the bringing upon or the avoiding of illness. So let's continue in the words. So if there's a kilkul, if there's a ruination, or pagam, actually can be even a smallest dent, like you have a pagam on a knife for shchita, that could be, it's such a small dent that it's only on a trained shoichet who's moving his finger along that he'll be able to tell that there's a pagam. So pagam is at a very, very small dent. A kilkul can be a serious ruination. So if there's a ruination or even a dent in the simcha, she bechinas yud minei negina, which is going to correspond to the different types of music. Al yedei zeh ba'im cholas min hayut minei tefakin. Now my pulse rate will bring illness into my body. Shnitkalkalin al yedei kilkul hayut yemnei min nixar shehem hasimcha. Any questions on this? This is very, very big. It's really huge. It's telling us the ingredients of simcha. Simcha is thought. It's a mitzvah to pay attention to my thinking and to be very, very strong in pushing away any thoughts of marashchara, atzvus, and realizing that simcha is triggered by song. That we are wired this way. That's the reality. And song has the power to change your heartbeat, and your heartbeat is bringing blood to every part of your body. It's not just a physical transportation of blood. Your mind, at the time that your body is moving, affects your physical health. Rambam talks about this, by the way, also in his medical writings. He talks about the importance of exercise. That he does mention in Perek Dalet in Hilchos Deis. He mentions it 3 different times. That how important it is to move the body. When you move the body, your lymph system is activated. The lymph system is what gets rid of toxicity from your body. The most common way of getting rid of toxicity is through sweat. Sweat is very, very healthy. The Rav Nachman himself brings this in, I think it's Torah Zayin, is it? Or Torah Vav, in Tinyana. I'm trying to remember now. I've forgotten. One of those 2. He brings how important it is, and it can cause simcha because you're getting rid of toxicity. So it says Rambam, something very, very interesting. He says the best exercise of all is a ball game, or anything that will bring you to simcha, because the thinking of simcha while you're exercising is not the same benefit as just physically exercising, because the presence of happiness alone has therapeutic and curative qualities. So Rambam 800 years ago is helping us understand. When you say ball game, I think he's referring to soccer, by the way. I'm pretty sure it was British football, but and it's definitely not American football, where I don't know how many times they stop in the middle of the game for their hugs and huddles, whatever they call them. But it's like no. This is if you see if you see British soccer, it's 45 minutes almost non-stop playing per half of the game. It's 15 minutes in the middle, and you need a lot of stamina for that. Basketball's very good, and baseball's a terrible sport. It's a really, really extremely inactive type of a sport, not to be recommended by Rambam. He's talking about moving your body. If you're dancing, that's phenomenal. Dancing to music, that's amazing. That's a very, very, because the presence of your joy when you're dancing, the thoughts that you're having when your physical body is moving, is not the same as just physically moving. Because you're one unit. Your body and your mind are working together. You can't separate the 2. The Reb Chaim Vitalzal in Shari Kedusha, where he's talking about the pulses, he mentions that you are not your body. The actual lashon, I think I have it here. The actual lashon is Adam Eino Guf. Guf Adam Eino Adam. The body of the man is not the person. It's only the clothing for your seichel hanitzchis, your mind, which is infinite. Then he goes on to explain that all the organs, 365 sinews and 248 ligaments, but the 613 total are connected to obviously the Tariq mitzvahs. Now Ramban tells us that originally before the Nevi'im, before doctors came along, the Torah does give you reshus to go to a doctor. From here we learn that you got reshus to go to a doctor. So what did we do if you didn't want to go to a doctor? So the answer was you went to a Navi. Why do you go to a Navi? Because the Navi would look at you or shake your hand like Rav Nachman was capable of. He could shake your hand and tell you what's wrong, past, present, and future. The Arizal was like that. The Navi would tell you the illness, where it's caused, which Aveira has caused that illness. So I knew what to do teshuva over. So originally, we would go to a Navi, not to a doctor, and the Navi would tell me the spiritual cause of why I'm suffering in this part of my body. Because the Tariq mitzvahs is everything. It's the skeleton of Kol HaTorah Kula. And so knowing which mitzvah I'm short on, whether it's Lashon Hara or whether it's the way I'm wearing tefillin or talking while I'm wearing tefillin, etc. It doesn't make a difference. The The body is responding to the mitzvahs we're doing and thinking and saying on a daily basis. And so he explains there that when a person does Aveirus to a certain point, he can cause the body to shut down, get illness and then die. But otherwise, the point is that you cannot divorce your mind. And now we know, because we're Jewish, we've got mitzvahs. You can't divorce mitzvahs and the mind and the body, because it's all one unified unit. So there was something else I wanted to quote from there. I've forgotten what it was. But he explains the system. It's not a very, this sefer has got about 5 different svarim in it. But Shari Kedusha is actually only about this much. So it's not a very big sefer, and it's not complicated Hebrew. It's in Lashon HaKodesh. It's learning type of Hebrew. It's not intellectual type Hebrew. And for the most part, it's Pashup Pshat, and how Hashem created the physical world, connected the spiritual world. So he opens up explaining the connection between the pulse rate and your physical health. So Rav Nachman is telling us simply how reality is made by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki kol mini cholayos kalulim biyut minei tefakin. Every imaginable type of illness is included in your pulse rate. So out of these 10 pulse rates, if someone has got that chokhmah, he would be able to tell which illness a person has. V'chein kol minei nigunim kalulim biyut minei nigina. And every single imaginable song is included in the 10 naginas. Ukafi kilkul asimcha v'hanigun, according to the destruction or ruination of simcha and the nigun, ken ba chaylas, keniskaleo. That is how illness comes. It's no real mystery. So simcha is actually the master key to good health. V'gam hachmei haroifim heirichu b'zeh. So this is written 200 and something 50 years ago or so. I mean, Rabbeinu Zal said it about 250 years ago. So he's saying, and I think this is really important because you know how much Rabbeinu Zal is not into doctors. But he doesn't say roifim. He says, V'gam hachmei haroifim. So you got tipshim amongst them. I don't want to say what I think what percentage that might be. V'gam hachmei haroifim. It's the wise amongst the doctors. Heirichu b'zeh that talk at length about this. It is so important to understand that happiness is a refuah. And illness is actually good news because it's telling me what? Turn up the volume of simcha. And what's ironic about illness is that I can so easily get trapped into being down on myself because I can't function properly when I'm in this pain. Or I've got this pneumonia, has v'shalom, or a terrible cough. And so my mind is completely... So I can easily forget that the illness is actually here to help me. Rav Nachman talks about it several times. It's either a kapara, or the illness is a wake-up call to make me wake up that I've got something to fix. And either do more cheshbon nefesh, or go to a tzaddik and ask, how can I help? Or just to talk directly to Hashem, Rabbi Shalem, help me. I know personally, ever since I got really ill that time, I started taking Rambam very seriously. And then I made a tape series on Rambam and health. And I made a small booklet called The Art of Healthy Living based on Rambam's directives for health. Because Rambam says something extraordinary. He says in Perek Dalet, halach, I think it's Chaf Aleph, he's only got 23 directives there, 23 halachas. In number 21, he says, anyone, kol ha-madrach et asmoi, anyone who follows ha-drachim, ha'elu, that I have outlined here, there's only 23 drachim, 23 directives, ani arev loy shelo ba lidei choli kol yemav. He will not come to any illness his whole life. Now, I know personally that I've been following the Rambam. I can identify literally every time I fall ill, and I have. Twice pneumonia, 3 times bronchitis. And I know every single time I can pinpoint which relationship I was dying over that lowered my immune, and then I became ill. Or how I took on way too much. I used to be on the road like 3 or 4 times a week, driving, and Hashem blessed me. I did have a pretty good stamina to keep going, and sometimes it was back after back. I was once a principal in a school for 5 years, and I was writing the curriculum for the school, and I was teaching first and second grade combined, and it was a part-time job because because in the afternoons, early evenings, I was preparing for lectures. And I was giving, on average, three lectures a week. So, and I was able to do it, but it caught up with me. And it caught up with me more than once. And when it did, that's when my immune system went down and stressed out from the overwhelm of taking on way too much. And guess what happened next? I became ill. That's good news. The illness is to slow me down so that I'll be in bed long enough to do some thinking that maybe I need to make some changes so that my body doesn't have to do this to me. Because it's not my enemy. My body's not my enemy. He's my friend. So Rav Nachman, I think, is helping us understand that when a person gets ill, then that is for me to pay more attention to Marashchara, Atzvus, and Simcha in my life, and make the necessary adjustments. So it's really working both ways. Simcha is the refuah before the makkah, and when I get the makkah, Simcha is the refuah to the makkah. Because you see actually in the language, they all agree that illness comes from what I'm thinking. I'm paying attention to the bitter stuff in my life, the black stuff in my life, and I'm paying attention to atzvus. It's not only the way to avoid illness in the first place, it's actually a simcha, it's a refuah gedola. Now Rav Nachman is going to go into la'atid, what's going to happen. As you know, at Har Sinai, the zuhama, the sickness that was injected into us originally through the Nachash and Adam and Chava, and then they ate from the Eis HaDas, that caused that we have this amenability to illness. But at Har Sinai, how did every single person become mirapeh? How every single person was cured? If they were blind, they got their eyesight back. 100%, 20/20 eyesight. What happened to every single party? How did that happen? Because Hashem removed the zuhama. The simcha of Matan Torah was so great. So, ul'atid, in the future, Hashem's going to remove that again. Once that's removed, you're only going to have simcha. Because illness is only a kilkul of simcha. So once you take out the illness from the equation, which is caused by atzvus, which is caused by marash chora, now simcha is the only thing that exists, so there's not going to be any illnesses. Happiness is going to exponentially grow tremendously. Therefore, and he's quoting here from Mishalmi in Megillah, Perik Beis, Halakha Dalet, and also from Vayikra Abba, Parsha Yudalef. Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyos roish chayla letzadikim le'atid lavoi. Hashem will be the head of the chayla. Here, right now, we're translating it as a circle, a dance circle, as Rabbi Chaim Kramer maybe translates it. It's a dance circle, le'atid lavoi, when all the tzaddikim will be in a circle, and Hashem will be the head. Head meaning either in the middle, because a circle doesn't really have a head, or if you want to take it literally right now, how to actually visualize that Hashem will be the head of the circle, or as we'll see, a head means above the head of those who are ill. He'll make a circle for the tzaddikim, and he'll be the head of that circle. Now, as a play on the word, chayla and chula means circle, but it also means chayla, same lashon. By the way, it also comes from lashon mechila, because the concept of mechila is that there's almost literally no simcha that's greater than knowing that a person has been forgiven. That's why after Yom Kippur, a person should have emunah. Says Rambam, I have to have emunah that I was mahol because Yom Kippur works. Mitzvahs work. So if I did teshuvah on Yom Kippur, I should have emunah in my teshuvah and be b'simcha. So mechila and mahol, a dance circle, is all related, and chayla is because I don't believe I can actually hustle shalom, get myself ill, because I don't think I'm worthy of Hashem's mechila. Ki shchina lemala merosha sav shel chayla. Hashem, famously, the Shekhinah is above the head of a chayla. That's why in Shulchan Aruch, a person who visits an ill person shouldn't sit lower or higher, or shouldn't sit higher, than the chayla. In Shabbos, Yud Beis Amud Beis, Shenema, Hashem Yisadenu al Eretz Tavai. Hashem Yisadenu, it's a lashon of sayed, which means a feeding, like in a Suda, but also means supporting, because that's what food is meant to do. It's supposed to support my health. So it does mean both. Hashem is the support for at the bed of the ill person, because the ill person is dying. So then what's going to keep him alive? And the answer is the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is there to keep him alive. Because the chayla on his own has no chiyus, it's diminishing. It's only the Shekhinah that is mechaya him. So we're talking now about what will be in the future, which is kedai to know, it's kedai to look forward to. We spoke a bit about it in the previous Torah, Kaf Gimel, because Rav Nachman does say in Lamed Gimel that a person should think about the tachlis of the tachlis, the soif shel soif, and that is that eventually after we die we're going to get Tchias HaMesim. And at Tchias HaMesim, Be'ezrat Hashem, there'll be eternity for every single Jew and every person who had some schus in his lifetime. So that is something to try and hold on to, that I live in this world for la'atid. I do not live in this world for this world. That's what Rav Nachman tells us to say every morning, right after Moda'ani, that I live for Elam Techazi, the future world. V'la'atid al yedei hasimcha, through happiness in the future, yittaken kol hachola'as. Every illness will be repaired, be cured. There'll be no more illnesses. It will be impossible because Simcha will rule. And if Simcha is ruling, it's impossible to get ill. So if we're going to read this backwards, then the understanding is that when I'm ill, the real solution, it may be medication in the meantime as a stopgap measure. But that's only to get my mind able to be sufficiently cognizant that I can pay more attention to turning up the volume of happiness in my life, paying attention to the good in my wife, and my children, my grandchildren, my children-in-law, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, whoever it is. There's so many nekudas tovos that Hashem wants me to find in every single human being in order that I can sustain good health. And good health is not just your body, it's v'toiv leiv mishta tamid. A good mind is at a constant banquet. That's when Hashem will be at the head of the chayla circle. Dahainu rosh hamachul, at the head of the circle. That means we're actually going to experience the Shekhinah. That's going to be the simcha that you can't let go of. Once you've tasted something, you can't untaste it. Like Rav Nachman says, once you've tasted my Torah, you're not going to be fooled that something else tastes better than you can't. It's just not possible. You can't if you experience something, you're an aid. You're a witness. Once you're a witness to what you experience, you can't unexperience it. Okay, there's such a thing as gaslighting, being hypnotized maybe, but otherwise, Pashup Pshat is that once we experience the Simcha La'atid, it will be impossible to become ill, because a person won't even be capable of getting stuck in Mara, Shchera, Atzvus, Daiga, Pachad, Yira. All of that will just fall away. Rav Nachman says in Pei Gimel, in Sichas Haran, that when a person's feet will be facing the door, dead on the floor, then all of a sudden there's going to be this sudden realization that everything I feared, and all the yira, and all the pachad, and all the daigas I had, and all the taivas will suddenly be meaningless. And I will realize in this moment how much time of my life, meaning really how much of my mind, which is where I really operate, I was spending invested in my taivas, or my worries, or my anxiety and my fears. In this moment, I get that, he calls it Yishuv Das Ha'amiti. I finally get a real Yishuv Das. The mind, Yishuv means sitting. I'm not standing, moving around. The mind is in one place. And Chaps, oh my gosh, I look back on everything I did and said and thought, and I realize what a waste, what an incredible waste of my mind. So, the general rule, this is the Lashon reflexive again, which means you're doing it to yourself. You're making yourself strong. You can't rely on anything outside of you. It's not a child's atlas course, I don't know what they call it today, with weights, and there's no physical course that will make me stronger over here. I'll still be weak in my mind, no matter how many muscles I strengthen on my physical body. I have to be miskabe internally. And miskabe internally, that's resilience. Resilience means, Hashem, you are with me, no matter what. That's the only thing that can keep a hostage alive in total isolation. There's a book, I'm not suggesting you have to read it, called Beyond Survival. I think I may have mentioned it, by Captain Gerald Coffey. He was shot down in the Vietnam War 6 weeks before the end of the war. And he remained 6 years and 9 days in solitary confinement. And after, I think it was about 3 or 4 months of torturing himself with the thoughts of, what I have to get into this, who said that we had to get into this war in the first place? And all these thoughts of torturing himself, besides the physical torture, he suddenly realized that if he doesn't make peace with his mind, he's going to go out of his mind. And so he ended up finding ways to find the smallest joy and laughter in the most ironic situations. I'm only giving you an example because here's a Gentile who had no preparation he never learned Likutei Moharan. There's no BRI Sfarim in English at that time, and yet he was forced to come to the conclusion that if I don't address my thoughts can run on their own and kill me, literally. There are many personalities like that. There's someone still here in Monsey, Baruch Hashem, is still alive. Rabbi Avram Moshe Weiss, I think his name is. Was it Avram David Weiss? He lives on 6 Wiener Drive. Avram David Weiss. When he was first diagnosed with ALS, he had placed a plaque in his living room, and it says, "I have ALS." And under the A, he wrote always. Under L, live. Under S, smiling. Always live smiling. The only 2 parts of his body, I don't know about now, but when I visited him last, it was quite a few years ago, the only 2 parts of his body that moved were his eyes and the muscles in his mouth, on his lips, were in a permanent state of smile. Constantly. And he had access to this technology, which you're probably familiar with, where someone who is a quadriplegic can, his eye inside the eyeball is able to look at the screen of a computer, and the technology is designed so that if you focus on a letter, there's an alphabet in Hebrew and in English on the screen. If you focus on a letter for 1.5 seconds, that's all you have to do, then that letter gets printed at the bottom of the screen. You go to the next letter, prints the next letter. Then you look at the space bar, and it creates a space. And that's how he would communicate to his wife and children. And this gentleman who's got ALS, with a permanent smile on his face, he has rotation of carers 24/7. He's a Vishnu Chassid, and they collect every month. I don't know what it is now. When I spoke a few times for their parlor meetings to raise money for him, it was $30,000 a month to keep him alive. And the first thing he told me on the screen, as soon as I met him for the first time, he said, "I have the most wonderful wife." It's true, he was in his 30s and now it must be his late 40s, I think, since I last saw. And his wife was living with a Munah, and his children loved their father. He did homework with them every single day. He learned Mishnayos with his younger kids. He had chavrusas all day long. He had a minyan come. He was always constantly grateful. That's all he would talk about. There was one occasion, one of the carers, a Gentile carer, once said to him, "Aren't you ever angry with God that he did this to you?" So he didn't respond. And when his wife came in and that carer finished their rotation, he communicated to his wife, "Please don't let that person come back again. I don't want anyone doubting for a second that Hashem made a mistake with me." He only wanted to live with Emunah. A few years ago, he made a siyum in Shas, Be'iyun, and it was attended by over 200 Rabbanim, including Rabbi Schlesinger, who spoke there. And he said, "I don't know if there's a person in history but Lefum Sara Agra learned all Shas, Be'iyun." Sorry?
I put the music for that part.
Wow, there you go. So you're an aide. So Rabbi Schlesinger says, "I don't know if anyone in history gets the schar of finishing Sas Lefum Sara Agra the way that this Avram David Weiss did." The reason I'm sharing this with you is because he knew the MS. We are not a body. A body is taking us along for a ride. It's the mind that counts for everything. And he understood that if I'm going to live a life of Torah at all in the prison he's physically in a prison, can't move, then this is what's going to count the most. And so what came out of his mind on screen was only positivity, but not because he was a positive thinker versus negative. He was a realist. The reality is God is only good. And for someone of that physical limitations to be able to say is a huge mussar. I remember walking out, the first time I ever visited him, I remember going out and breathing the air and looking at the sky and saying, wow, what were my problems again? I'm sorry, like, what problems could I possibly claim I have? Here's a gentleman who is imprisoned in his body, and all he is about is emunah and simcha. It's absolutely astonishing that when his first son, I think his name was Yankee, got into shidduchim, his children were persuading the mother, please be very, very careful to only choose a shidduch that's fitting for our father, because our father is a tzaddik. Do you understand? I'm trying to explain this. Vast majority of people who become quadriplegics, in this case it's ALS, so the quadriplegic part is part of the symptoms. But someone who's a quadriplegic, or in this case someone with ALS and their muscle tone disintegrates to a point where they've got no control over any muscles in their body. The vast majority of these people start feeling sorry for themselves. Can you imagine that? Why me? And then what ends up, they become Mara Shchera, bitter and black in their personality, and then the person who they're closest to, their spouse and children, start distancing themselves from that person because it's not pleasant to be around someone who's so down. I know a friend who said, it's not my fault, I'm a pessimist, it's in my DNA. My blood type is B negative. So, there's no point in being a pessimist, it never works anyway. But so it's most people who has v'shalom have this condition are not able to discover the treasure inside their mind between their ears to realize this is where I operate. And this man, Avram David Weiss, is so into learning with his own kids and communicating. He said the hardest day of the week is Shabbos because he can't use his technology. So he got a different method of an aleph base on a board and isolating the letters based on his eyes. Well, that's a separate thing. But the point is, most people can't go in here and discover I'm not a body, I'm a mind. And if I'm a mind, I can choose how to be. And therefore, you've got two choices. A person can disintegrate, and usually they die within 5 years in this particular type of illness of ALS. He's still going strong. I think it's must be about 17 or 18 years now. And it's extraordinary because what's keeping us alive? And the answer is simcha. And simcha is affecting the body, which is keeping the body alive. There's no mystery here. It's a very simple shalsheles. It's a chain of command. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a chelik elokah mima'al, which is our neshama. Our neshama powers our mind, our thoughts. Our mind powers our body. And our body is determined in terms of its physical metabolism and its physical ability to integrate food and assimilate and expel, all based on simcha. So any illness is actually good news. I've got to learn to turn up the volume of simcha and pay attention to where I'm hurting myself and other people. The general rule here is to make oneself strong with all one's koiches. Everyone has lots of koiches. Smiling is a koyach. Thinking is a koyach. Dancing is a koyach. Singing is a koyach. Laughter is a huge koyach. And when they say kol hachmei haroifim, which I really believe he chose those words deliberately, hachmei haroifim, you've got very few doctors who understand this today. And I think I may have mentioned Bernie Siegel, Dr. Bernie Siegel. Did I mention him? I did mention him. And Norman Cousins. Norman Cousins was diagnosed with a rare case of leukemia, and he laughed himself back to curing himself because he signed himself out of hospital, took a motel nearby for $29.99 a night instead of $1,000 a night in hospital, of course through Medicare or whatever insurance he had. And he hired in those days, videos of every slapstick comic, every Peter Sellers, every, John Cleese, everything. And he laughed himself. He laughed hours and hours of laughter. We've got laughter clinics all around the world, mostly in Europe. There are some in America. So one of the people that initiated that was Norman Cousins. Another one was Patch Adams, Dr. Patch Adams. It's a fascinating thing that people would go to this laughter clinic and all you do is laugh. There was no reason that you're laughing at a specific joke. You just, when people are laughing all around you, you can't help, and you start laughing, and it becomes a belly laugh. It's really, really like laughing and laughing away. When you're laughing, you're saying a very simple message: I'm happy. And with that message, every cell in your body listens to what you say inside your mind. And when you say, I'm happy, every cell says, I don't care what the illness is, we're going to fight the illness, because life is good. It's worth living for. It's worth fighting for. So it's a simple reality. I'm not taking away from the possibility that sometimes a person needs to go to medications as a stopgap measure. As Rambam starts off in Hilchos Deos, the first halacha, he says, I didn't bring Rambam with me, but the first halacha, he starts off, Huyel, Guf habari vashalim, since a body that is completely healthy and complete, hu bedarchi Hashem, is considered going in the ways of Hashem. So the first line is already telling you that your physical health is not a separate subject from God. It's a spiritual fulfillment. It's medarchi Hashem he. And he says, Kivan, and then he explains that if a person is a chayler, then I can't be focusing on knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu and learning his instructions, his Torah, because I've got to focus on first getting better. I've got to improve my health. And then, and that first halacha, he says three things, which you would think, hey, Rambam, I don't need you to tell me that, surely. I need someone of your towering position. He said three things in the first halacha: eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty, and relieve your body when you to go to the bathroom when you. At first glance, you say, "What's going on here? What is going on here?" I need to be told: eat when you're hungry, sleep, drink when you're thirsty, and go to the bathroom. And Rambam's telling us something very simple that I believe is profound, simply profound. Listen to the integrity of your body. It was designed perfect. When you're hungry, your body is saying, I need to be refueled. Now in America it's a bit different because we've been trained to eat and snack, and in some diets they actually say you never go hungry. But Rambam is basically telling us your body has been designed that when you're thirsty, obey your thirst. And when you need to defecate, don't delay, because your body's saying, I've got to get rid of the toxicity. According to some, colon cancer, which is a huge reason for one of the major cancers, comes from holding on, has v'shalom, to toxicity in the body and not defecating, urinating straight away. And it ends up, the whole body is porous. So what ends up, the whole body gets has v'shalom intoxicated because it's supposed to be expelled when the body tells you. So I'm supposed to be paying attention to my bodily functions. And this is what Rav Nachman is basically telling us. There's a very simple relationship that you cannot compartmentalize and say, my health has nothing to do with a spiritual existence. It has everything to do with a spiritual existence. So we've got many koyches. Diet is a koyach, simcha is a koyach, music is a koyach. All of these are very simple koyches. Liyos ach sameach tamid. To live, to be, to exist happily, constantly. This is a real choice. Ki teva adam. This deserves much more attention. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I realize I've gone way past. I apologize. We'll have to go. I have to go into this. This really deserves a lot of attention because he's going to explain to us what is it that typically sabotages my desire to be besimcha tamid. And it's a very simple sabotage. It's, as you're going to put it, the teva of a person. Person is going to be mamshich after Mara Shchera and Atzvus, and Machmas Pigei Umikre Hazman. Those three words we're going to really unpack because there's so much there that really opens up to what it is that is sabotaging my happiness on a. So we'll leave it there, and we'll call it a cliffhanger. And Be'ezras Hashem, we'll see you next week.